Hey, I'm Dr SCL. I'm a dad, a chiropractor, and the translator you didn't know you needed in this, the first year of parenting. This is Decoded, the first year, the podcast that turns baby brain confusion, mum burnout, and milestone panic into clarity you can actually use. Let's make sense of the chaos by decoding it together. Hi, welcome back to Decoded, the first year. I'm Dr SCL, chiropractor, dad, and nervous system decoder. And today we're tackling the motivation and emotion behind the question that I get all too often from parents. Is this normal? In other words, this episode is all about how to decode baby development without the Google spiral, and why it is way more important to decode as opposed to diagnose. Is this normal? It's one of the most common questions parents ask, and I understand why. Being a parent myself, I get this way more than I may have used to. As a parent, you want reassurance. You want certainty. You want to know you're not missing something important. But here's the problem with that question. Normal is an incredibly wide spectrum, and when we rely on that too heavily, we stop observing. Instead of asking, is this normal? I want you to ask, what is my baby expressing right now? Because behavior is never random. It's a child's form of communication. We all know that when a baby cries easily, arches, startles, avoids positions, or struggles to settle, that's not their personality. That's their nervous system speaking to you. And the nervous system doesn't speak in words. It speaks in patterns. As a dad, this changed everything for me. I stopped seeing behaviours as problems to fix and started seeing them as information to interpret. Some behaviours mean I'm still integrating something. Some may mean it's hard for my system to operate right now. And others may just indicate I need more support here. And then finally, it's all about learning. So when we jump straight to diagnosis or labels, we are always going to skip understanding. Decoding is calmer than diagnosing. Decoding keeps you curious. Diagnosing makes you reactive. And here's the important part. Not every signal needs intervention. Sometimes the most supportive thing you can do is give the nervous system time and the right environment. And as a dad and a chiropractor, I've learnt this the hard way over the last 20 years. This is why understanding development matters so much. It tells you when to act and to when to trust the process. My goal with this podcast isn't to make you worry more. It's to help you see more clearly, because clarity builds confidence. And confident parents raise regulated babies. Your baby's not asking to be perfect. They're asking you to pay attention. And when you know how to listen, everything feels calmer. Now, before we talk about crawling, before we talk about walking, we need to talk about the hidden foundation beneath every milestone and movement pattern. In other words, what comes before movement even looks like movement? The answer is primitive reflexes. These are not problems to be grown out of. They are not glitches. They are the nervous system's original operating system. Primitive reflexes are automatic, brainstem-driven movement patterns most often present at birth. They exist for one reason and one reason alone: to help the nervous system organize itself through movement and to fundamentally survive. Each and every single one of these reflexes has a particular job. Each one turns on at the appropriate time if we have a system that is in balance and in harmony. And just as importantly, each one needs to integrate at the right time. Integration doesn't mean disappearance, it means control. Because when a reflex integrates well, the nervous system no longer needs it to drive movement because higher centers of the brain are taking over. Movement becomes intentional, adaptable, efficient. Postures start to become stable and foundational. You see, when a reflex doesn't integrate, it doesn't vanish. It just keeps influencing movement from behind the scenes. So let's try and make this a wee bit more practical. Let's take the Moro reflex, commonly referred to as the startle reflex. Now, before I go any further, it is a real bugbear of mine. The Moro reflex is technically not the startle reflex. The startle reflex, it's commonly referred to as, is driven by sound. The Moro is driven by movement. So back to the Moro reflex. It is the nervous system's early alarm system, firing with sudden change in position or sensation. Early on, it is protective. But if it remains beyond infancy, the nervous system stays wound up, ready, and always looking for threat. That child that often struggles with postural stability, balance, sensory regulation, all the way to emotional regulation. And later on, a Moro reflex that's still dominating can create walking to look cautious or rigid or overly fast and tense. Not because the legs are the problem, but because the nervous system never learned safety through movement. Now let's talk about one of my favorite. It's called the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex. More commonly easily said, the ATNR. This is the reflex that links head turning with limb movement. Turn the head, the opposite arm and leg move in particular patterns. Particularly the arm will extend and the leg will flex. In early development, this reflex is essential. It teaches the nervous system how to coordinate the left and right side of the body. It is therefore foundational for rolling, midline control, and those early crawling patterns. If the ATNR doesn't integrate well, you often see difficulty crossing the midline, which can be seen as even difficulty with reading, asymmetrical crawling, so there'll be the alternatives to the classic pattern, so something like bear crawl, bunny hopping patterns, which will be tied into some of those modified crawling postures, and challenges with bilateral coordination. And then when it comes time to walking, if the ATNR is still present, you'll see an asymmetrical arm swing, poor trunk rotation, and as a result, compensatory balance strategies. Again, the milestone, according to a chart, may well be met, but the quality tells a very different story. Now let's bring in the symmetrical tonic neck reflex. This one is epic when it comes to crawling, as it helps the baby separate upper and lower body movement. Head goes up, arms will extend, legs will flex. Head goes down, the arms flex and the legs extend. It is this reflex that allows the baby to move its hands and knees in a crawling posture with organisation. When the STNR integrates well, crawling becomes reciprocal, rhythmical, load-bearing through the shoulders and hips. When it doesn't, you often see babies that will skip crawling because they collapse through their arms, their hips are unstable, and we see a rushed progression into standing. And here's the key. If crawling is bypassed or poorly organised, the nervous system doesn't get enough opportunity to integrate this reflex, which means walking starts on an unstable neurological base. In other words, it's a house of cards. Finally, let's talk about the tonic labyrinthine reflex, or TLR. And this, as per the name, is deeply tied into gravity, balance, and posture. It influences flexion and extension tone of the body. Extension are the muscles at the back that keep us upright. Flexion are the muscles at the front, which will be commonly associated with us being in a state of stress or sympathetic dominance, something that is very commonly talked about nowadays. It will also influence, as a result, postural control and head-body relationship in space. In other words, do you know where your head sits with respect to the rest of your body? As a result, this reflex in babies is foundational for sitting, standing, and walking upright against gravity. But if it remains active, children often compensate by locking joints, overusing the extensors, and appearing strong but incredibly stiff. And this is where early walking often gets misread as being advanced, because it looks confident, it looks strong, but it is driven by overreactive muscles, not by postural control. So here's the reframe with all of this said and done that I really want you to hold on to. Milestones are not isolated events. They are expressions of nervous system organization. Primitive reflexes are the bridge between the reflexive movement and voluntary movement. In other words, if the bridge is unstable, everything built on top of it works harder. Harder work will require compensations, and over time, they fail. So when we talk about crawling quality and walking readiness, we're really talking about whether the nervous system was given time, space, and movement variety it needed to integrate these early reflexes. And this is why, when it comes to development, earlier is not better. Integrated is what we're looking for. And this is why watching how your baby moves will always tell me more than when it hit a charted milestone. Following on from this, as we progress through the weeks, we're going to connect this episode directly into how crawling sets the neurological stage for walking, and why skipping steps never saves time. Because the nervous system always collects its dues. When you're ready to dive into this stuff even more deeply and truly nerd out with me, reach out via the socials at Mount Hawthorn Chiropractic, and I will share with you the baby milestone decoder, where development is broken down into practical strategies of where and or when to act or engage. As your daily reminder, please remember it's okay to ask for help. That's what I'm here to do. Dr SCL, out. Thanks for listening to Decoded, the first year, where we translate the mess of early parenting into something that actually makes sense. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, a partner, or a mum that you know who is quietly struggling through the noise and secretly Googling every milestone. If you want to hear more decoding, follow at Mount Hawthorn Chiropractic on the socials. Let's keep decoding the chaos. No mansplaining, no pressure, no judgment, just clarity when you need it most. Please note, this podcast isn't medical advice. It's just smart strategies from a Gonstead chiropractor, a dad, and someone who's been in the room with hundreds of mums trying to make sense of their baby's development, their own postpartum recovery, and the constant noise that comes with modern parenting. Always chat with your health team for specific care.